Welcome to the Private School Leader Podcast, where private school leaders learn how to thrive and not just survive as they serve and lead their schools. I strongly believe that it is possible to have a long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. And my passion is to help you figure out exactly how to do just that right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And I'm your host, Mark Minkus. So during the 1990s, I coached the boys varsity basketball team at the school that I led at the time. And we didn't have a full-size gym at our school. And so we rented a gym that was about a 15-minute drive from the school. And we usually rented it on Friday nights because that's when the gym was available. And I remember one game, after the game, doesn't matter who won, we were all just walking out afterwards, and it's dark. And I'm walking out, and there is standing one of the referees from the basketball game. And he looks really upset. And so I'm like, what's wrong? And he said, someone stole my car. And so I don't know about you, if you've ever had your car stolen, or anything of value stolen, but I'm sure that it feels pretty awful. And I don't know, what if you've had something stolen of a material value, but I do know that you have had something else stolen in your career as a private school leader, and that is your joy. And I also know who committed this robbery. It's the parents at your school. And look, we all love parts of our job, and we are feeling great. It's smooth sailing every once in a while. And maybe we're there and we're enjoying a great event like Grandparents' Day or something, and then boom, a parent robs you of your joy because they complained about the sound system, or they complained that the coffee was cold, or just whatever. It's like you're going along and then boom, they rob you of your joy. And so we're not going to let that continue to happen, because on today's episode of the Private School Leader Podcast, we are going to discuss the 5 keys to making sure that the parents at your school don't steal your joy. And since we're talking about parents today, I want to give you a free gift to say thank you for listening to the podcast. And it's called the 7 Steps to Having Successful Meetings with Upset Parents. And this guide is an 11-page PDF that gives you a step-by-step plan to have better meetings with the parents at your school. Every good coach has a game plan. Every good teacher has a lesson plan. But I think too many private school leaders don't have a plan when they sit down to meet with an upset parent. Well, now you have a plan. And you can grab this free guide at theprivateschoolleader.com/meeting. And that's the 7 steps to having successful meetings with upset parents. Just go to theprivateschoolleader.com/meeting, and you can grab that for free, and you will be much better equipped to have a meeting with an upset parent. And so, again, while we're talking about parents, I have a question for you. Is it just me, or are the parents at our schools getting more demanding, more intense, more often? Dealing with parents is part of the job as we lead our private schools, but it can quickly lead to stress and anxiety and feeling overwhelmed. And that's why I created Parent Academy. And now you have a step-by-step framework that will help you go from feeling stressed and anxious to feeling confident and calm. And over the last 33 years, I've built successful relationships with thousands of parents, and I've packaged that knowledge into an online course. And not only that, but after I teach you in 4 modules, I'm going to teach your teachers these strategies as well, because Parent Academy contains 2 45-minute webinars that are teacher PDs with a printable notebook and guided notes and discussion questions. So just go over to theprivateschoolleader.com/Parent Academy and check that out. And I think it can be a game changer for you and your teachers. And then finally, I want to give you one more free gift before we jump into today's topic. And this one is actually a free 45-minute masterclass called Winning at School Without Losing at Home. And this is a video webinar training, and it has guided notes, and it'll do exactly what the title says. It will help you be successful and organized and energized at school while still taking good care of yourself and your loved ones. And so I know that might sound too good to be true, but go over to theprivateschoolleader.com/winning to grab your free masterclass. And again, it's called Winning at School Without Losing at Home. That's free for you over at theprivateschoolleader.com/winning. All right. I want to tell you that the definition of happiness and joy are two different things. And I was reading in a blog post by Embark Behavioral Health, and they defined happiness as typically a more fleeting emotion, often sparked by a particular moment or event that brings a sense of excitement or exhilaration. Okay. But joy, on the other hand, is, quote, a more long-lasting state of being characterized by contentment and satisfaction with life overall. So we kind of get it. We are, there's a difference between happiness and joy. Happiness tends to be more situational, and joy is more a thing that is a long-lasting, feeling of contentment and being satisfied. So if we're talking about whether you're happy at your job as a private school leader, or if you have joy, that's really two different questions. And I know that sometimes parents, it's like when we deal with them, we're on a little bit of a roller coaster and they can steal our happiness, but it's a real problem if they steal our joy, that long-lasting sense of contentment, sense of purpose, and sense of I'm where I'm supposed to be doing what I'm supposed to do. I don't want the parents to steal your joy. And so we're going to talk about the keys to making sure that the parents don't steal your joy. And so key number one is to remember why they are so anxious. Okay. So we're going to remember why they are so anxious. When I think about why parents are so anxious, I immediately think about the book Hopes and Fears by Rob Evans and Michael Thompson. And I will link that in the show notes. And I will, this book, honestly, you've heard me say it before if you've listened to the podcast for any length of time, that I really believe that this book is the most important book for private school leaders to own and read. I recommend that you read it once a year. It's an easy read. It is about 150, 160 pages, but it is full of gold as far as helping you understand why parents act the way that they do, and more importantly, to help you learn the strategies and the tools that will reduce your stress and increase your ability to build effective relationships. And, I don't get commission or affiliate income for promoting this book. The link is directly to NAIS because that's the cheapest place you can find it on the internet. I think it's around $35 or $36. But in Hopes and Fears, Rob Evans and Michael Thompson remind us that parents have hopes for their children, but they also have fears. And when we think about those hopes and fears, it will remind us why they're so anxious. And so remember, I'm giving you the keys to making sure that the parents don't steal your joy. Well, the first one is to remember why they're so anxious. So let me just give you some of these things that parents have as hopes. This is right from the book, Hopes and Fears. So the hopes that parents have for their children: my child will be safe and make friends. They will be known and loved. The school will maximize my child's learning potential. There will be smaller class sizes. My child will get more individualized attention. Maybe they'll make the varsity team or get a role in the spring musical. Maybe they'll get into a good college. Those are the hopes and dreams that parents have for their children, but they also have fears. And this, again, is right from the book. Their fears: will my child be safe? Will the teacher judge my parenting negatively? A fear that the teacher has huge power over my child, and a fear that my most cherished dreams for my child may not come true. So their child being safe, being judged in the way that they parent, and that their cherished dreams and hopes and dreams won't come true. And listen, parents, we know this, but I'm going to say it anyways. Parents will often or usually not act rationally when they're coming from a place of anxiety or a place of being in one of the stages of grief, because their dreams for their child probably aren't going to be realized when they get some news about a diagnosis or whatever the case might be. They're so focused on the news that they're not focused on the fact that through growth mindset and resilience and support, that perhaps those dreams can come true. But they're coming at it from a place of anxiety. And so I'm not saying that it doesn't feel crappy. I'm not saying that it doesn't cause you stress, but I am saying that it helps a little bit to help us not let parents steal our joy when we, first of all, remember when they're saying the things that they say, when they're doing the things that they do, many times it's coming from a place of anxiety. Okay. Strategy number 2 for not letting parents steal your joy is to put on your suit of armor. So I want you to visualize actually putting on a suit of armor when you interact with parents, but especially the more difficult parents at your school. And I want you to pretend that when they are saying certain hurtful things, making demands, getting upset, trying to intimidate, whatever the case might be, that those are arrows that they're shooting at you. You know, the words that they say, the things that they do. If you have on a suit of armor, those arrows will hit the suit of armor. They will probably dent the suit of armor, and they might even bruise your skin because the dent is crashing into your skin that's inside of the suit of armor. Okay? But if you don't have a suit of armor on, those arrows that are flying from the parent to you, they're going to penetrate the flesh. And that is those words and those actions causing you to internalize the emotion of what they're saying. And then there's blame, and there's shame, and there's judgment, and there's regret, and there's all of the things. But if you have that, figuratively, you put on that suit of armor, it sometimes helps. And for a lot of my coaching clients, it helps tremendously that when they're meeting with certain parents, that before they meet with them, before they talk to them, they visualize putting on that suit of armor. And then what it allows them to be able to do is to kind of let those arrows dent the suit of armor. They still feel the impact. They still feel the words, but they don't internalize the emotion of those words. There's a big difference there. And then I want you to also expect some of them to be rude. And you're like, well, I do. I expect this certain parent that I'm picturing right now to be rude whenever they open their mouth. But if we are expecting certain behavior, then we're never surprised by that behavior. And I'm not saying that you should be the doormat, that you should be the whipping post. There's always a line, and we need to know where that line is to end a conversation. But I think there's too many private school leaders that are emotionally internalizing way too many words from way too many parents. And one of the strategies to keep them from stealing your joy is to not let their words penetrate your suit of armor. All right, that brings us to strategy number 3 of making sure that parents don't steal your joy. And number 3 is to become a curious observer. All right, so I want you to use your imagination. I want you to imagine that you're on a whitewater rafting trip, and you're in the raft. You are wearing your helmet, you're wearing your life vest, You've maybe got a mouth guard in, because I guess sometimes they give you a mouth guard so you don't bite your tongue. And you have your paddle. So you're bouncing down the raging rapids of this whitewater river. So I want you to imagine that that's you, okay? And then I want you to imagine that in scenario number 2, that you are a person that's standing on the shore and you're watching a whitewater raft with people in it bounce down the river. Okay? As private school leaders, we are the one in the raft with the gear, bouncing down the raging rapids, hanging on for dear life, trying to get to the end of the river. We never, ever, or almost never, pause and become a curious observer of the work that we do, because we have a bias towards action, we have a bias towards problem solving, we have a bias towards what's next, a bias towards just going on to the, very next problem or event or situation. And reflective practice is not a strength for most private school leaders because we think we don't have time to pause. I get that. That used to be me too. But a way to not let parents steal your joy is to become a curious observer of the conversation. So instead of just being in the conversation and kind of bouncing down the river and having the raging rapids kind of be the analogy for this back and forth between you and the parent, if you could pause for a moment and just be a curious observer of the conversation and ask yourself objectively, is their behavior rational? Okay? Objectively, is what they're saying even accurate? Objectively, is this request reasonable? Objectively, is the thing that they're blaming you for actually your fault, or did it actually even happen? Objectively, is what they're saying true? So the reason I'm using the word objectively is because I'm trying to take you out of the raft, the raging rapids, and put you over on the shore. And this conversation that's happening, let's say in your office, is to try during the conversation, which is difficult to do, but it's possible, to be an observer, a curious observer of the situation. And when you become an observer, it dials down the emotion, first of all, your emotional autonomic nervous system response in your body, but it also keeps you from internalizing those emotions and letting this person steal your joy. Because if everything that's coming out of their mouth, everything that they're saying, the facial expressions that they're showing, all the things are just absorbed by you because you're in it and you're in the raft and you're just bouncing down the river, then we're never going to assess the validity of what they're saying, and that emotion is just going to be absorbed and internalized, and it's going to steal our joy. So number 3 is to become a curious observer of the situation. So we're doing the 5 keys to making sure that the parents don't steal your joy. Number 1, remember why they are so anxious. Number 2, put on your suit of armor. Number 3, become a curious observer. And number 4 is to practice empathy, not over accommodation. So when we meet with a parent, it's crucial to listen and empathize and empathize with their concerns, acknowledge their concerns. But we don't need to go into rescue mode every time that a parent reaches out. And I think that that is something we need to be more careful about, because the title of this strategy is Practice Empathy, Not Over Accommodation. I know that in my experience that I am quick to try to go into rescue mode, problem solving mode, and then sometimes I'll go into over accommodating mode and over promise and then it drains my energy and my time, and it creates unrealistic expectations for the parents. And really what I'm doing is I'm overpromising and over-accommodating just to finish the meeting and to end this uncomfortable conversation. But then I have to go back to the teacher and then say, yeah, I told the parent that you would do X, Y, and Z. You would send a email every day at the end of the day summarizing how Samantha's day went. And it's like, that's an unreasonable request. And so why did I do that? I did it because I was stressed out. So we need to make sure that we are practicing empathy, not over accommodation, because this is going to steal our joy twice. It's going to steal our joy when we are thinking about, like, I shouldn't have done that with the parent. And then it's going to steal our joy the second time when we have to go talk to the team to tell them what we agreed to. Okay? So let me give you an example. So if a parent is anxious about their child's performance, let's say, or something that's going on in the classroom, I'm going to say something about 3 times, okay? Listen, active listening first, validate their feelings, and then acknowledge their concerns. Listen, validate, acknowledge. Listen, validate, acknowledge. So we're listening. We're using all those active listening skills. We're not interrupting. We're jotting down some notes. We're letting them, if they ask for the meeting, we let them go first and we let them talk and we let them go until they run out of steam, and we're not going to interrupt them. And then when they're done, we're going to validate their feelings. You notice I'm not saying we're agreeing with their feelings, and we're going to acknowledge their concerns. Now, acknowledging their concerns is not agreeing with their concerns, because I said a few minutes ago that objectively, sometimes their concerns are not valid, or maybe they're not true. And so the key here to practicing empathy and not over-accommodating is to listen, to validate their feelings, and then acknowledge their concerns. So let me give you an example. Let's say that I'm talking to a parent, and this is what I'm going to say. Quote, "First of all, this sounds really, really hard for Olivia and for you two as her parents. I can see why Olivia is feeling left out when she sees on Instagram that her classmates are doing things outside of school. I'm sure this has been difficult for you to watch, and I'm sure it's also hard on all of you to move to a new city partway through a school year." So I said that to a family who had moved partway through the school year from another city, 7th grade girl, and 2 or 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks into her being at the school, the parents are all upset, and they're saying that Olivia is being bullied and that she's being intentionally excluded from social activities from among the girls in 7th grade. And then the girls are posting on Instagram. Okay? So what they are saying is coming from a place of anxiety and emotion. It's not accurate. It's completely normal for girls who've been friends for years to do stuff socially, to not yet include the new kid, and then to post about it on Instagram. That's not bullying, and that's not intentional exclusion and intimidation and whatever. All right. And so what I did, I'm going to read this to you again. What I did, and listen to it. I acknowledged, I listened, and then I validated their feelings, and then I acknowledged their concern without agreeing with their concern. So listen for those 3 things when I read this again. Quote, "First of all, this sounds really, really hard for Olivia and for you too. I can see why she's feeling left out when she sees on Instagram that her classmates are doing things outside of school, and I'm sure that's been very difficult for you to watch as parents, and I'm sure it's also hard on you to move to a new city partway through a school year." And in the end, I told them, I said, listen, let's just give it some more time. Let me check in with you in 3 weeks. And I know this doesn't happen in every situation, but it got better. The girls warmed up to Olivia. Olivia warmed up to them. I told them, I said, just have Olivia be herself and be friendly and then let's check in a couple weeks. It needed more time. And so I didn't agree with them. I didn't make all of these over accommodations. I didn't go and talk to the girls in 7th grade and say, be nicer and start including Olivia and just, calling parents and all this stuff. I listened, I validated, I acknowledged, listened to what they said, validated the feelings surrounding it, and acknowledged their concern without agreeing with the concern. And listen, I want you to remind yourself that you are a leader educator. You're not a counselor. And so guide the conversation towards actionable outcomes. We can't get into all of the emotions and why they exist and where they're coming from and all of those things. We can avoid having parents steal our joy if we practice empathy and not over accommodation. And that brings us to our final strategy of how to keep the parents at your school from stealing your joy. And that is number 5, go to the joy. And episode 117 of this podcast is called There's Joy on Your Campus, It's Just Not in Your Office. And I will link it in the show notes at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 130. And there is joy happening on your campus. It's just not happening in your office. And when parents are stealing your joy, we need to fill up with joy. And too often we get stuck in our office dealing with all of the urgent and important things that happen to keep a school running. And then a day or two goes by and then you ask yourself, like, did I see a kid today? And so let me just run through a list of things that are happening on your campus during the day that could bring you joy. Recess, the swings at recess, hanging out with kids, playing Foursquare, building a snowman when it's snowing, the lunchroom, talking to the kids about Taylor Swift or sports or movies or video games or their favorite thing to do in art class. The class changes, just being in the hall during the class changes, the specials like art, music, PE, computer, library, a lot of fun, joyful things going on in there. Being in classes, just depending on the age of the kids, building blocks or reading a story or watching the biology class dissect a frog or whatever. Group projects and presentations and skits and club time assemblies, religious service like chapel or mass or tefillah, holiday celebrations, spirit days. Like these are the things that are happening in our schools almost every day. And what about joyful things that are happening after school? Student performances, even student rehearsals for a theater production, a musical recital, a dance showcase, sports practices, games, after-school programming for the younger kids, science fair, kids making calls for Day of Giving, all of these things that are happening during school and after school. You need this more when the parents are stealing your joy. I'll say it again. You need this more when the parents are stealing your joy, is to go to the joy. And how do you do that? How on earth do you remember? How can you make it happen? You can be intentional and you can schedule it. And you're like, I don't really get it. Okay, well, I'm not going to take all the time to talk about that now, but the link in the show notes to episode 117, it gives you a step-by-step plan for how you can make this something that exists in your calendar so that it actually happens. Because let's face it, our good intentions get derailed almost every single day, and we need some help from our calendar and some intention. So episode 117 will help you have a plan for going to the joy and having it be a regular thing and not just a every once in a while happens by accident because you happen to be walking from point A to point B and you stumble upon some joy. We're going to go to the joy. Okay, so the 5 keys to making sure that parents don't steal your joy. Number 1, remember why they are so anxious. They have hopes and fears. And if we remember why they're so anxious, sometimes that will keep their words from stealing our joy. Number 2, put on your suit of armor. If you expect them to be a certain way and you also let those arrows dent your armor instead of penetrate the flesh and internalize the emotions, we can hang on to some of that joy. Number 3, become a curious observer. Remember, occasionally you want to be the person on the shore watching the whitewater raft bounce down the river instead of just always being the one in the raft. And number 4, in our 5 keys to making sure the parents don't steal your joy, number 4 is practice empathy, not over-accommodation. We're going to listen actively. We're going to acknowledge we're going to validate their feelings and then acknowledge their concerns. And then number 5 is go to the joy. And so your call to action for this episode is to pick one key. I've given you 5 keys, and just use it the next time a parent is starting to steal your joy. Pick one key and use it the next time a parent is trying to steal your joy. And speaking of parents, I have another free gift for you, and it's a free guide called 5 Strategies to Help You Work with Difficult Parents. And as we've been discussing today, working with parents is part of the job, and most of our parents are great, but some of them can be demanding and emotional and difficult. And this guide will give you the tools that you need to build better relationships and have better meetings with the difficult parents at your school. And so if you go to theprivateschoolleader.com/parents, you can grab this guide, 5 Strategies to Help You Work with Difficult Parents, and it can really make a big difference for you. And again, this is just a big thank you for you listening each week. You can grab that PDF over at theprivateschoolleader.com/parents. And then just another quick final reminder that I think Parent Academy could be a real game changer at your school for you and for your teachers. There's 4 modules for you as the leader, and then there's 2 45-minute PDs for your teachers. We've had schools in North Carolina, Ohio, Texas, and California that have already used these PDs with their teachers, and the feedback has been really, really good. So just check that out at theprivateschoolleader.com/Parent Academy. And if you get any value from this podcast, if you've ever used the strategy, if it has ever encouraged you, I'd just love to hear from you. Just shoot me an email at mark.o.minkus@gmail.com and tell me what's a strategy, or maybe what's your biggest pain point right now, and maybe I could turn that into a future episode. And then also, I just would ask for a big favor if you could share the link to this episode or the link to the podcast with another leader at your school or another school leader in your life, or if you see that rising leader at your school, send them the link to the podcast, and let's get this content out to private school leaders so that they can benefit from it as well. And I just appreciate you so much. I'm so grateful for you taking time out of your busy work week to spend it with us, with me here today, and that we can be in this space together every week. And so I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking some precious time to join me here today. And I'll see you next time right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And until then, always remember to serve first, lead second, and make a difference.